Hi, my name's Kate Lemka, and I chose to do why sweatshops are negative for the developing countries. The definition of sweatshops, defined by the U.S. Department of Labor, is a factory that violates two or more labor laws. Sweatshops often have poor working conditions, unfair wages, unreasonable hours, child labor, and lack of benefits for the workers, meaning that people are overworked and underpaid pretty much. I wanted to focus mostly on child labor laws because I feel like those are really important as well, and most of the people doing this, no one said they were going to do child labor. I wanted to focus mostly on Bangladesh and China because those are two really big places where they make a lot of children work. Bangladesh sweatshops are in child labor, and labor in Bangladesh is really big because of the fact the country itself is so poor. There is no other way that they can pretty much sustain a living if you live there because you need any money that you can. So they work for whatever they can work for. Bangladesh is poorer today than the U.S. has ever been during its existence as a country, meaning that there is literally just no money in Bangladesh. Back in the 1820s, it has been regulated that children work no more than 8-hour days when they're working in a textile mill, but obviously that is not true. Like, that has not been followed through. Kids nowadays work up to 18 hours depending on how much work they need to get done that day. Owners of the companies often set a limit or like expectations for the people to meet that day, being if you're typically when you're younger you have a lower like number you have to meet, but when you're older you have a higher number you have to meet. For example, in one of the videos that I watched about these kids in China, this one kid was 15 years old and he had to make approximately I think it was 300 shirts that day, but when he was 17 he had to make upwards of 700. Therefore, obviously, when he's 17, his days are longer because it's a lot of product to put out in one day. With that, kids nowadays have been working up to 45 hours a week, if not more, which is completely insane because of the fact they're children. Child labor, children or kids put into child labor either work because they have to because it helps them make ends meet for their families, or they are put into it by people who illegally take them and stuff and force them to work for them, both being bad. It is just sad that some children have to work that many hours for their families to live, because you think here in America the parents work and then you are a child, and it's just that's how we've always known it to be. So it's kind of sad that is how it is for them. One example that I saw in a video that I watched was in China. It was about child labor in China, and they were producing these water guns for Walmart, and it was sad because they showed the people tediously putting the guns on the cardboard that it comes on and screwing them in and stuff, and it was sad because then they next showed a video of that gun being sold in Walmart here in America. So it's kind of sad, you don't really think about where the product comes from, because when you see a cheap product, you just oh, you think that's just a cheap shirt, I want to buy it because it's cheap, but you never think it's cheap because it was made in China or Bangladesh, because it was, I don't know, because it's cheap labor there, so obviously the product's gonna be cheap. So it's just sad that we don't necessarily think where things come from. We just think oh, it's cheap, so I want to buy it. So I don't know, I personally want to start looking more into where things are made and taking that into account as why it's so cheap or why it's so expensive, and I don't know, it's kind of a big thing now. We should look into more where our product that we buy is coming from. I think that overall sweatshops can be avoided in a sense. It's just sad that I feel other governments the United States can help those more poor countries and help them with the whole sweatshop dilemma, because we do buy from them obviously because a lot of our stuff is made from China, but we just need to realize how it's made and what the people are actually going through, because here in America, if we had child labor, you would be shut down. It just doesn't happen here. So it's kind of I think it's possibly it could be avoided. And I don't know, they say that the only way for child labor and sweatshops in the end to be like pretty much like eradicated is global, or is economic growth. So I feel like if the economy in like all these countries were to get better, then we wouldn't really need to pay people such low wages to work and make product that we all use. So yeah.